Hey everybody, Derek here to bring another video for The Walking Dead. Countdown to the start of Season 7. And we are exactly 2 weeks away from The Walking Dead's Season 7 premiere on October 23rd. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a very long wait, been a very hard wait, and just not a lot to predict, unfortunately. This year was very hard to make Walking Dead videos because of how Season 6 ended and basically how Season 7's trailer didn't really give us anything that would indicate plot points. Yes, some things, but not a lot. So a lot was really hard to predict as a result of it. But what I'm going to do in this video is discuss a major breaking development for The Walking Dead in a sneak peek that was just released called The Right-Hand Man. I'm going to discuss what it means, I'm going to discuss what happened, and what I think it means for Season 7. If you don't know anything about this sneak peek or you don't want to be spoiled in any way, exit the video now because otherwise you will be spoiled. Okay, so this sneak peek deals directly with Negan's kill. It happens about the time after it happens. It's pretty clear because, number one, you see that Lucille, Negan's baseball bat, is absolutely covered in blood. It's very clear it's been used. So this scene takes place after the kill, or kills, because many people have been speculating maybe it is more than one. Or who knows, maybe one might happen later. It's hard to say. But it's clear it takes place afterwards. And what it deals with is Rick and Negan. So we know that the victim is not Rick. We know that for a fact. Rick's in the trailer. He's at this point. So it's not him. Not that we thought it was anyways. So here's what happens in the scene. So this clearly takes place after the kill. You see Rick's face, and along the right side of Rick's face, you see blood. It's a streak of blood. And what I presume that to be is that when Negan was killing whoever he was killing, obviously blood would be flying in places, and I think that this happened to just come onto Rick's face when everything was happening. So I think that's an indication of that. It might also be a clue as to who was killed, because if it was somebody on Rick's left, then perhaps the blood would be on the other side of Rick's face. So it makes me think more likely that whoever Negan chose, it was on Rick's right, which would consist of Maggie, Abraham, I believe Michonne was over there, Daryl, Rosita, or Glenn. And there's still further clues that go along with that as well. Because the first thing you hear is crying. You hear different people crying. I think I hear more female crying than I do male crying, but male crying I hear later on in that. And the first thing you hear is Negan saying, "Was the joke that bad?" And that's in reference to a comic book scene where Negan makes an unfortunate joke, because that's just how he is. He's just very sarcastic. He's able to, pull those kind of lines all the time. And, that's the first thing he says. And you hear Rick say the following. He goes, "I'm going to kill you. Not today, not tomorrow, but I'm going to kill you." And he says it very slowly. And the reaction on Rick's face is, it's a little bit mixed, because on the one hand, he says it sincerely, but the look on his face is, of course, still in shock. It's not really that fierce Rick that we know. It's more of, like, I think it's almost like when somebody, says something out of the blue just to sound tough, but they really don't have the power at that point to really say anything. It'd be like somebody saying, "Well, I'm going to beat you up," like you don't really have the tough posterior to do that, but nonetheless, you say that. It was kind of the same thing. You still have Rick having this, shocked look on his face, this look of confusion, fear, and he just doesn't know what to do at this point. So he says those words, and Negan kind of gets eye level with him and just, he actually makes a kissing sound with his lips, and, he pretty much plays it cool. He asks about his right-hand man, Simon. So apparently Negan's most trusted individual in the TV show is a man named Simon. Now, whether this is the man that we saw in episode 16 when Rick first encountered saviors in that episode along the road, he was the guy who voiced Trevor in Grand Theft Auto 5. It might be him. Could be another person, but I think more likely than not it might be him. And what you find is that Negan says, well, what kind of weapon was Rick carrying? Was he carrying a knife? And Simon goes, no, he was carrying a hatchet. And, Negan basically tells Rick, he goes, Simon is my right-hand man. He's the guy I trust the most. Without one of those, what do you got? And I think it really, illustrates bonds that people can have. I mean, by having somebody there that you can absolutely trust, obviously in the Walking Dead world, that is very, very important. And Negan starts to speculate. He goes, do you have a right-hand man, Rick? Or wait a minute, did I, he makes a knocking noise with his mouth, indicating, or did I just kill your right-hand man? So it does also seem to indicate a clue that perhaps Negan killed a man rather than a woman. That was something that I was predicting for a very long time. I did not see Negan killing a woman. I figured it would be a man, and he does seem to indicate that he killed a man, and does wonder, was it Rick's right-hand man? And, when he says this, Rick kind of looks away. He looks off to the side when Negan says this comment. And at that point, after that, he takes the axe that Rick was carrying, holsters it in his belt, then drags Rick across the ground, and he basically, towards the RV, and he says, I'm going to go have a conversation with Rick. He might go, he might come back, but if he doesn't, then we can just tear the others inside out. So in a sense, it's really him taking Rick away, and I think they're going to have some kind of a conversation, because I think that maybe Negan is still questioning whether or not he has really sent a message, because, you look back at Rick's group and all that they have done to the Saviors. I mean, Abraham and Sasha killed 2 of them in Always Accountable. You have Daryl blowing away about 8 or 9 of them in No Way Out. And then you get episodes 12, 13, 14, and they killed a bunch in those episodes as well. And I guarantee you, I don't think there's ever been a group that has gone and been such a threat to Negan's, savior group. So I have to wonder if, Negan is taking this even more seriously than anything else. Like, he really wants to beat this group so bad, and if he doesn't think that he can, then I think the only way he thinks he can do it is if he defeats all of, Rick's group and just takes Alexandria, because he might think that maybe Alexandria by themselves, the residents before Rick's group came, that maybe they're not, as strong. He might know that. So I think the reason why he's dragging Rick away to go have a conversation is because he really needs to make sure that he got his point across. And I think he wants to vet Rick and see exactly what Rick is thinking. And then from there, he'll make a decision as to what he's going to do. So the last thing that you see in that scene in the trailer is that the camera pans back and you see a blanket that's on the ground. And of course, if you remember, right when season 6 was ending, Daryl got shot by Dwight. And in that sneak peek, in that end episode when Daryl was in the lineup, he had this blanket over him that he was wearing, whether it was to keep him warm or, keep the blood in. I don't know what it was for, but Daryl was wearing that throughout the part of the episode at the end during Negan's speech. So you see that, and then it pans back, and you see, again, like this mix of blood and brain matter, whatever it is, just a mess on the ground. And that's it. So we get a little bit of a sneak peek at what happened. We do, of course, know that Rick is not the one that was killed. And then the other thing is that, at the very end, while Negan is doing this, you also hear a male crying. So you hear different kinds of people, crying or making kind of like sobbing sounds or something like that. I think at the end there, I think the cries are Eugene's. I'm pretty sure. It sounded more like him. It sounded more like his voice. So I think that's who that is. And I think that maybe more towards the beginning, it might have been Maggie that was crying. I'm not sure, though. It's just hard to say. But that's really what the scene is. And, of course, what you're maybe left to wonder about this is that, has this pointed out that maybe it is Daryl that was the one that was killed? Because, you hear all of these references towards the right-hand man. And if you ask fans, who is your right-hand man, who would be Rick's right-hand man, you would probably have an overwhelming number of people who would say Daryl. So again, you also see the blanket laying there. Well, why is the blanket laying there? Did Daryl just throw it off? Well, he might have. You never know. But all of the signs, the title of the trailer would seem to indicate that maybe it was Daryl that was killed, and that Rick had such a reaction because that was his right-hand man. That was his friend. That was the person he may have trusted the most. So all of this, do I really think it was Daryl? If you want to know my opinion, I think no. I think that that's just a distracting thing that they're trying to do. I think that they're trying to, in a sense, play it off to mean that, oh, well, they want us to think it's Daryl going in, because we know, the creators know how we feel about Daryl. So I think that it's really just a ploy. I don't think that it was Daryl. But nonetheless, this trailer does give a lot of indications to things. I mean, number one, I still think that with the blood being on the right-hand side of Rick's face, it does make me think that it was somebody to his right, and the only males to his right were Daryl, Abraham, and Glenn. And if it's not Daryl, then it was either Abraham or Glenn. And of course, you do have to wonder, you've been hearing these rumors that there were maybe two people, that maybe it was Glenn and Abraham. It could have been both of them, but I think that it was two people on Rick's right. Or at least one person on Rick's right. And again, you also have this indication that it was a man, that, if he wanted to use the term right-hand woman, he would have said right-hand woman. I think that right-hand man specifically indicates a man, not a woman. So again, you have between Abraham, Daryl, and Glenn is the people who are on Rick's right. So again, I think that really... this is just, I think it's just trying to trick us in some ways. But I think in another sense, though, it honestly could point to either Abraham or Glenn, or it might also point to just the significance of the fact that Rick might not really see anybody as above, anybody else. Now, I may be wrong in saying that, but I feel like in many respects, you think of Rick's group as a whole as being this big family. And if you take one person away from that family, how much are you going to damage the other members? You think about that. And I think that maybe it was just an indication that it doesn't really matter who Negan killed. It was going to hurt Rick. It was going to hurt other people. But you might think that maybe that does point more towards Glenn, because of the fact that, you go back to the time of season 1, you remember that significant moment when Glenn saved Rick from the tank. I don't think Rick ever forgot that. And it might be that indication that, maybe it's not so much that Daryl means more to Rick than Glenn or anything like that. It just might be that in that moment, that might have been what Rick was thinking about. Rick might be thinking about the moment when Glenn rescued him and thinking, you know what, you're right. Because when you hear Negan's language, when you hear him saying, well, without that, what do you got? Rick might have been thinking about that about Glenn, thinking back and thinking, yeah, I had a moment like that. I had a moment where I was alone, when I had no hope. I was surrounded by walkers. Who saved me? Glenn saved me, gave me the opportunity to see my wife and son, to be a part of this group, to live, and to bring us to where we are now, no matter how it may have turned out. So it may have been that in that moment that he was thinking about Glenn, which may indicate that it is Glenn, that's who Rick is thinking about. And of course, that does coincide with the comics of it being, the fact that it was Glenn in the comics, it being so significant that they kept it as Glenn in the TV show as well. So that's what I think. I don't think it was Daryl. Again, I think this is just something that's distracting us. But again, right-hand man, in a different moment, in a different time, I think it could mean different people, as well as the fact that I don't really think Rick has just that one person. I think everybody does matter to Rick. And I think that, in that moment, again, he focused on that memory, and I think that might be why he did that. Not saying that Abraham doesn't have those moments too, but you really can't think of too many moments that Rick and Abraham have shared together that really have that kind of significance. But I think Rick would still be upset if that happened either way. But we'll see what happens, but it was definitely a very nice sneak peek to have. It was nice to see something from that scene after so long, and to see that it wasn't Rick, that things are changing, that we're really getting to see a scene that's going to be very significant to the show, and it's definitely nice that Walking Dead introduced us to that. So that's what I think, and I can't wait for the next 2 weeks to be over so that Walking Dead can premiere. I cannot believe it's almost time, but we're almost there. I think we're going to make it, and I think that the season 7 premiere is going to be one heck of an episode, no doubt about it. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think my analysis is correct? Do you have another thought about who it might be? Does the scene mean something different to you? Don't be afraid to comment. Let me know. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. Have a very wonderful evening, and thank you all very much for watching.